and welcome to today's pop-up PD on demand, instructional practice from in-person to remote learning. I'm Carol Dibble from the Connecticut State Department of Education Turnaround Office, and I'm joined by my colleague, Greg Dresco, a consultant in the Turnaround Office. Today's PD is the first of a two-part series to highlight 10 effective instructional strategies and how to bring them to life in a remote setting.
Here are our learning targets for the series that we'll be presenting. First, we're going to examine effective instructional strategies. Second, we're going to exchange ideas for bringing these instructional strategies from in-person learning to the virtual classroom. And third, hopefully, we will learn from one another. Now, here are our learning targets for today's session. First, we're going to examine effective instructional strategies. And second, we're going to consider ways that we can bring these instructional strategies to the remote learning environment.
We always begin with the why. John Hattie's work looked at a variety of influences on student learning and found one of the greatest impacts on student outcomes to be collective teacher efficacy. Teachers make the difference. Teacher effectiveness is dependent on teachers having a deep knowledge and understanding of subject matter and pedagogical ability. Around the country, schools have shown significant gains and narrowed achievement gaps by focusing on high-leverage, researched teaching strategies that work. Closing the gap and creating conditions for student success is why we must focus on high-impact instructional strategies. The best way to impact student behaviors, like low attendance and student engagement, is to use effective instructional strategies that engage and excite students about learning. In 2020, it has become even more important to employ these effective teaching strategies to reach our students in person and in the remote classroom. All of the effective instructional strategies are transferable to the remote teaching setting. The product of the use of these effective instructional strategies, whether in person or remote, is improved student outcomes.
There are many effective instructional strategies. Today, we're going to focus on 5 instructional strategies that we chose because of their transformative impact on teaching and learning. As you participate in our professional learning today, you might say that we may have left off a must-do for your school. Every school has many needs, and we encourage you to continue with the strategies that get results for your students in your community. However, if all the students are not succeeding, we challenge you to consider that it might possibly be time for a change. Take a dive into these 5 instructional strategies that are great for in-person learning, and let's take a look at how we might bring them to the remote classroom setting as well.
Our first instructional strategy is setting instructional goals with learning targets. Basing every lesson on what students are learning is the foundation for effective instruction. Educators may call them learning objectives, learning targets, or learning intentions. Regardless of what they are called, learning is at the center of the lesson. This is the intended learning outcome, what students will know, understand, or be able to do as a result of today's lesson. Without a clear picture of the learning goal, the lesson will surely fall flat and seem like a series of tasks. The goals should be communicated, and students should understand how today's learning fits into the bigger picture of the learning unit. Adding the criteria for success helps the goals come to life and lets students know what they must achieve to be successful. Be careful not to replace learning goals with doing goals. You may post an agenda of what will be done in the lesson, but make sure that agenda of task supports the intended learning and students know what they are going to be learning today.
So there are some ways to continuously revisit the learning target and success criteria while teaching remotely so that students are reminded of the end goal throughout the lesson. Good preparation will lead to better instructional practices because the learning target will be embedded throughout the lesson. Some of the suggestions that we make are that you can post the lesson, the learning target and success criteria at the very start of the lesson. You can either do this on the first slide of a Google Classroom, Google slide, or on camera on chart paper. You can post it on slides throughout the lesson in your learning platform that your community is using, either through Pear Deck or PowerPoint, Google Slides, Nearpod, Flipgrid, whatever you're using at your school. You can post it to the online assignments right there at the top of the assignment so that the students can see it directly as they're working on their assignments and be reminded. You can verbalize it throughout the lesson and continuously come back to it every 2 or 3 slides or every couple minutes. And of course, revisit it at the closing of the lesson. And the best way to do that is possibly to use that as a virtual exit ticket so the students can show you that they've mastered the success criteria at the end of your lesson.
Our next strategy is visuals to support explanations. Providing visuals for students helps them see the connections and develop a deeper understanding. You may have heard the quote, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." Many of these strategies that we're talking about today support this idea. Showing students visuals will help them learn. Visual supports might include anchor charts, models, word walls, vocabulary banks, manipulatives, and videos. These supports help students anchor their learning and provide references to reinforce new or previously learned concepts. Models help students use concrete tools to understand more abstract ideas. Many students need these visual references to connect with the words that they hear in order to develop their understanding. When students can independently refer back to a visual model, it's an opportunity to foster learner independence and self-efficacy, which supports the development of students' academic identity. We want students to see themselves as capable, independent learners.
So as Carol said, one of the things that we talked about is for students to be able to refer back to things. One effective way of bringing visual supports to the remote classroom in an organized manner for students to refer back to is to create a virtual classroom. Students can come back virtually to school and access many of the same necessary tools and resources that they could access during in-person learning in order to be successful while learning remotely. And some of those things that you can put into your virtual classroom could be virtual manipulatives. There's a lot of virtual websites that have these manipulatives available for free. You could have anchor charts that are created that are either student created that you take pictures of and post. You can do online books and resources. You can have virtual games, virtual word walls and vocabulary resources. And then of course, you can post videos either from YouTube, TeacherTube, and of course, screencastify videos of yourself as you do the lessons to go along with those and post those into your virtual classrooms.
Our next strategy is explicit teaching. While we want students to construct their own understanding, yes, they still need explicit teaching. Research has shown us that lecture style teaching is not as effective and may lead to unengaged students or even undesirable behavior. But that doesn't mean that students don't still need explicit instruction. Explicit teaching in person may come in many forms, such as in a mini lesson to kick off learning, creating a short instructional video for students to watch before they come to class, meeting with a small group to give targeted instruction based on the needs identified in the exit ticket from a previous lesson, or even conferring with individual students with a planned learning focus. All of these forms of instruction bring on explicit teaching. This is where you show, you tell, you explain, define, and connect information and guide students to develop new understandings.
So as Carol was saying, a lot of those things go along as well with remote learning. There are many platforms and tools that support explicit instruction that can increase student engagement in the virtual classroom. Here are some examples that we've seen around the state that are effective learning tools that help increase the explicit teaching opportunities and best practices for educators. So some of the examples of the platforms that we speak about are Google Classroom and Google Suite. We've seen teachers using Nearpod, Pear Deck, Seesaw, Flipgrid, Jamboard, Padlet, and there's many others that lets you watch student working in real time that teachers can collect data, and it helps them improve their instructional practices in real time and offer feedback as you go along.
The use of concept maps is a great instructional strategy. Deeper learning comes from making deeper connections to ideas, and concept maps help us to make those connections. Concept maps created by students help them connect to new learning and ideas. It helps them make meaning out of new information and consider how this information is important to them and to other concepts. Students can work individually or in small groups to build their concept maps. Deeper meaning and understanding comes from deeper connections.
When moving from in-person to remote setting, concept maps are easily accessible through many of the virtual tools that we spoke about on the last instructional practice. And they're easily created through the platforms that you use in your schools. Some of the more common ones are Google Drawing and through Google Classroom. Conceptual learning can continue to take place using technology that's both interactive and engaging. And as Carol said, it's student created, and that's going to lead to those deeper understandings and deeper meanings.
And now our final instructional strategy for the day. Selecting high quality tasks. The learning activities that we plan for students matter. Not all tasks are created equally, and the quality of the task impacts the quality of the learning. Research shows us the impact of high quality tasks can significantly impact student results. If a task is of low quality, but the teacher implementation and instruction is great, students will still have low results. If the task is high quality and the implementation of the task is low, results will be moderately successful. Combine a high quality task and great implementation and students will have high results. Note, this does not say they will have great results if they come from an affluent zip code, or they will have great results unless they're English learners. No. High quality tasks are instrumental in good teaching and will support learning for all of our students. So what makes a high quality task? First of all, it needs to be aligned to the grade level standards. A high quality task requires problem solving and reasoning. It's adequately challenging to students and engages them in productive struggle. Too easy and no learning's happening. Too hard and students can't really engage with the task. Planning more open-ended tasks with easy access and a high ceiling for complexity is a great way to offer students challenging and attainable tasks.
The many platforms that we've spoken about a few times already in this professional learning that are being used in our schools today offer the remote learner opportunities to learn, engage, and practice these quality, rigorous skills to master the learning target and the success criteria that's necessary, as well as offer that valuable feedback and data collection in real time. These platforms offer the remote learners the opportunity from teachers for that high quality tasks, as well along with the high quality engaging implementation that Carol was just speaking about. Again, some of those things that we've seen in the schools and the communities: Nearpod, Padlet, Jamboard, Seesaw, Google Classrooms. One that we haven't brought up yet is Google Forms, which is very valuable. And finally, Pear Deck.
Today, we have focused on these 5 instructional strategies. You may find that you're using some or all of these strategies, or that you may have a favorite that you use often in your instruction. Other strategies may be new to you, or you haven't really had much experience with it in the remote setting yet.
So now this is your opportunity to reflect on each of the strategies and consider how often you're purposefully employing these strategies during in-person as well as the remote learning. Click above on the link to find the reflection document. It's underneath in the middle right there with that yellow. So we ask you to consider each instructional strategy and how you've brought it to your classrooms this year. We know that 2020 has been extremely challenging. We know that you've had to be flexible in ways that you've never been asked to before. And we know that you've had to almost completely transform your instruction as you move to a remote setting for learning. Bringing our best instructional strategies may have felt almost nearly impossible. So what we hope is that this professional learning is spurring ideas about how great instructional strategies are possible in the remote learning environment, just like you were doing in-person teaching. So please reflect on how you have used these strategies in person as well as remotely.
As we close today, we ask you to think about next steps. You might want to do this activity with your team. We are using a PQP strategy, which is a great way to reflect with students on their learning. We start with praise. What resonated with you today and seems like a great idea? Maybe you realize you've been doing something really well. The Q stands for questions. What lingering questions do you have, and who can help you find the answers? And finally, the P is for polish. What strategy in your instructional toolkit needs a little bit of polish or attention? Sometimes when I've been doing professional learning, I say I learned something again because it reminds me of an instructional strategy I haven't used in a while. Maybe today something came to light that you realize you need to pull back out and add to your toolbox and your practice. Feel free to pause this video and work with your team as you consider how you're going to put these strategies into place. Don't forget to come back. We have a couple of more things for you. Do you want to learn more about effective instructional strategies? See Pop-Up PD On Demand Part 2 for 5 additional effective instructional strategies. Also, check out the PD On Demand playlist at the Connecticut Learning Hub. You can use this tool to self-pace and guide your learning to explore additional resources and ideas on effective instructional strategies.
So as you engage in the work implementing effective instructional strategies in the remote classrooms that you've learned about today, we want to see examples of these instructional strategies. So please take a quick video, snap a picture or 2 or 3, and write a quick description and share it with us. We're going to be gathering these examples from the field in a follow-up pop-up PD in February. We know that great things are happening in Connecticut, and we want to showcase your work and your communities, as well as your effective instructional strategies in the remote learning environment for everybody to see and learn. Please send your videos, your pictures, your write-ups, and your remote teaching examples to me. And the email is right there at the top of the page at greg.dresco@ct.gov. And like we just said, we don't want you to just tell us, we want you to show us.
We are really happy you joined us today. Remember to check out Part 2, available on the Connecticut State Department of Education Turnaround website. Just go to the Professional Learning tab and select Pop-Up PD On Demand, Effective Instructional Strategies from In-Person to Remote Learning, Part 2. Also, watch for additional pop-up PDs available in January, including formative assessments in the remote learning environment, and a new series beginning on January 20th on building community in the remote learning environment. Also, we've added our email addresses here for you. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or there's some way that we can support you in this work. Thanks again, and we hope you have a great day. Stay on for just another moment while we share with you a slide and show you the references that for the resources that we used to develop this PD. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot.